Place the emphatic words of a sentence at the end. The proper place in the sentence for the word or group of words which the writer desires to make most prominent is usually the end. So when Strunk has the stuff on the left and the stuff on the sentences on the right, stuff on the left is usually bad examples, and the sentence on the right usually is much improved example. Humanity has hardly advanced in fortitude since that time, though it has advanced in many other ways. Generally not as good as this one. Humanity, since that time, has advanced in many other ways, but it has hardly advanced in fortitude. The steel is principally used for making razors, because of its hardness. Because of its hardness, the steel is principally used in making razors. I've been seeing this a lot lately among younger learners, using a comma before because in a regular sentence, subject, verb, predicate. I mean, it just seems, or subject, predicate rather. It just seems, it seems like it's something that's so obvious. You're generally not going to use a comma before because. It happens. There are situations where you would use it, but they're very specific situations. By and large, you don't usually use commas before because. And if you can restructure it this way, because of its hardness, comma, this steel is principally used in making razors. It just looks and feels and sounds better. So again, more practice, you know, um, perfect practice, or excellent practice makes better. I'm not a fan of practice makes perfect, because we're human. We're flawed. We're gonna make mistakes, but excellent, protracted, focused practice makes better. um, and just keep reading, keep writing, and just know that usually there's not going to be comma before because, just regardless. Um, but if you put it in front, as a phrase in front, because of its hardness, comma, this steel is person. So we usually making razors, then it just sounds much stronger, and much clearer with regards to uh, the sentence structure. The word or group of words entitled to this position of prominence is usually the logical predicate. That is the new element in the sentence, as it is in the second example. Now, some of these, sentences, they might seem a little bit dense, and I totally understand. That's one of the reasons why I'm, trying to go over them just a little bit more in layman's terms. Um, you know, this kind of writing, a lot of times might make a lot of folks feel like, I'm a little bit behind. I don't even know what a participial phrase is, or past perfect, or imperfect tense, or whatever. I'll tell you this: what's most important, obviously, if you're taking a grammar test and you're being tested on the parts of speech and these different tenses and whatnot, you've got to learn those. But if you forget those, just know that practicing by reading a lot, reading a lot of really good texts and just quality writing is going to help you write a lot better. It's just going to help you dramatically, even if you forget exactly what the imperfect or the past imperfect, etc. So right here, usually the logical predicate. Um, it's we won't go into all of that. Well, that's a different video at a different time. You know, but even if you want to use context clues. So if you remember predicate from when you were younger, you're like, okay, predicate, is that the one with the verb? Is that the section of the sentence with the verb, or is that the section of the sentence with the subject? And it's actually the one with the verb. So predicate. Predicate. It's going to be probably towards the end, um, as it is in the second example. So it's the logical predicate, meaning it's the logical um, uh, connector that is the reason why something is. So this steel is principally used in making razors because of its hardness. Um, so because of its hardness, so even though it might be a little bit confusing, because you're going to say, oh, it's usually the logical predicate. Well, the predicate is at the end of a sentence, right? Subject, predicate, or the subject and the predicate, which includes the verb. But what they're talking about is that it's usually the logical predicate, but it goes in the beginning. So sometimes it's a little bit confusing, um, the writing, but it's a lot of it is just to not feel overwhelmed, um, with regards to this writing, and just to know that even if you don't know what every single word means, that doesn't mean that you can't plow through it and really glean the most that you can from a book such as Elements of Style. That's one thing that I will say that is hugely important with regards to being able to continue to learn, is to learn as clearly as you can and understand as much as you can. But if there are little sections that you don't understand, or you need some clarification on, look at the examples. Go ask someone that you respect. Go, and once in a blue moon, especially if it's not for actual homework or an actual test, then maybe you just, you're saying, you know what, I don't know what that means yet. Maybe if I come back to this book in a couple years, maybe I'll know what every single word means. Um, but don't be afraid of doing research, doing outside research, poking around, sniffing around, as they say. Um, it's very, very helpful. Um, a lot of fun discoveries, and helpful discoveries have been made from curiosity, being curious, like, oh, I wonder what that means, or I wonder what this means, or I really want to know what this paragraph means, and I'm gonna pick apart each word, and I'm gonna go look up these words and their synonyms, and so. But if you don't understand every single word, please don't be overwhelmed. Just keep plugging away and keep learning, and you will improve over time. So the effectiveness of the periodic sentence arises from the prominence which it gives to the main statement. All right, so here we go. Here are some examples. 4 centuries ago, Christopher Columbus, one of the Italian mariners whom the decline of the Roman republics had put at the service of the world and of adventure, seeking for Spain and westward passage to the Indies as a set off against the achievements of Portuguese discoverers, lighted on America. With these hopes and in this belief, I would urge you, laying aside all hindrance, thrusting away all private aims, to devote yourself unswervingly and unflinchingly to the vigorous and successful prosecution of this war. The other prominent position in the sentence is the beginning. Any element in the sentence other than the subject may be emphatic when placed first. Deceit or treachery he could never forgive. You could say he could never forgive deceit or treachery. However, it becomes emphatic when placed first. So it's a little bit creative, somewhat colloquial, I guess, but it could be effective depending on the writing. Um, Again, it's a flourish, right? Because it's not grammatically, you know, it's it's not grammatically ideal. However, it does make sense, and if used creatively and used sparingly, it can be effective. For example, deceit or treachery he can never forgive. So vast and rude, fretted by the action of nearly 3,000 years, the fragments of this architecture may often seem at first like works of nature. A subject coming first in a sentence may be emphatic, but hardly by its position alone. In this sentence, great kings worshipped at his shrine. The emphasis upon kings arises largely from its meaning and from the context of Rufi's special emphasis. The subject of the sentence must take the position of the predicate. Through the middle of the valley flowed a winding stream. So here the position of the predicate, meaning the second half of the sentence with the verb, flowed a winding stream. The subject of the sentence must take. So it gives it a special emphasis. The principle at a proper place for what is made to be most prominent is the end implies equal to the sentence. It says the paragraph and the paragraphs of a composition. Now, this might seem a little bit vague. The most important, I think, of the most important um, thing, I guess, to note is, grammatical rule or grammatical and stylistic choice that I recommend is to say something out loud repeatedly and to say something in one's brain repeatedly and to sort of hear if it sounds like it fits or not. One of the things that I talk about in other videos as well is, a good writer, and we're talking about essay writing here. A good essay writer writes, but I mean, I think it obviously fits for novelists as well and people that write other forms of writing. But for essay writing, you're making very deliberate choices. It's not just like I'm going to splash out a bunch of words. You're thinking about these words, whether consciously or subconsciously. Um, uh, and it's important that you keep these in mind. So again, this goes back to reading a lot. If you read a lot, you're going to know that normally you want to write, "He could never forgive deceit or treachery." But once in a while, to show a flourish, to really emphasize, deceit or treachery being the other in this essay or in this argument, um, maybe that sentence would fit. So it's just a matter of making choices. They're stylistic. Different teachers might have different opinions on this stuff. It's another reason why I always recommend that students, turn in papers early. I just saw on Quora.com, um, someone that pretty much got all A's, and all A's at a good, you know, good university as well, studying mechanical engineering. And he says, the same thing that I've been saying as well, which is try to turn in papers early, and so you can get feedback from your study group, if you have one. I didn't have that many. Some people would rather work alone. Um, but there were times where I did. But also getting feedback from your teacher as well, you know, and to do the assignment as soon as it's assigned, and try and get it done early, and then see if you can't get some feedback, and then turn in a final draft when the final draft is due. But yeah, here's an example. So place the emphatic words of a sentence at the end. Most importantly, just like reading a sentence, comparing it to a different sentence, reading it, saying, what, this sounds and looks better. Love the commas. This sounds and looks better. The comma because it's not very common because of its hardness. Yes, it's clear. Because of its hardness, what? Blank. This steel is principally used in making razors. Thank you very much.